Hey, party people. All right, this is the third time I'm recording this because the universe hates me, but let's do it. Let's talk about sizing. Okay, I asked on Instagram what your sizing questions were, so I'm going to answer them here. Please pay attention to what I am drawing on screen because I'm going to address it at the end of the video. All right, let's first talk about this chart I made. So I scoured the internet, looked at a bunch of online shopping sites and brands, looked at their size charts, and kind of took a average snapshot of what is going on in sizing in the industry. So this chart is not an ideal situation or something that I'm dreaming for in the future or what I think you should do with your brand. This is a state of the industry address, as it were. All right. So I have here bust, waist, hip measurements. I know that most of you watching are women's wear designers, but if you watch my videos, then you know that, it's women's wear if women are wearing the clothes, and it's men's wear if men are wearing the clothes, and where it comes from is where it comes from. You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's kind of how I feel about that, but whatever. So I have bust, waist, hip measurements because they're the most common measurements used, and I have them here in imperial and in metric in brown. These are just numbered like just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just for quick reference to line up. And then here in blue, I have the number sizes for the USA for what these sizes are. I have the SML letter approximate. So size 4 to 6 is approximately a small, etc. I have some size conversions of some major conversions that are used, that I've seen a lot, Japan, Australia, Europe, etc. When you have these really small sizes, you go up an inch in the grade. So the bust gets 1 inch wider for the next size, 1 inch larger for the next size, etc. When you start getting a little bit bigger, the gaps become 1.5 inches. And then as you get bigger, they become even more. So this is a 2-inch gap. And then here is a 3-inch gap when you get to the super plus. Like here, I have the waist getting graded bigger and bigger sooner because often, not always, but often, waists need to accommodate as people grow, their tummies grow, but also waists expand when they sit. That's all sizes. And so like larger sizes like to accommodate those waists. So I have them graded bigger, faster up here, the hip also a little bit as well. This is the origins of this video, okay? The question was, what is it actually mid-size, and does that even exist? All right, so first of all, the smaller half of this spectrum is called straight size, okay? People call them regular sizes, people call them not plus sizes, but the typical industry standard term is straight size. And then you have down here, the plus size. And some people, when you get to size 30 and up, some people refer to them as super plus. When you have a huge brand like J. Crew, Gap, those like big chains and stuff where they have a lot of resources and they have a ton of money, they can afford to cut a lot of sizes because cutting more sizes takes more money. So they will do I think J. Crew does a 00 to a 16, last I checked. That's a big spread. But a lot of smaller brands, they can't really afford to hit those extremes. So they'll start with a 2 to 14 range or a 0 to 12 range, somewhere around there. So what I'm saying is basically the range of the largest sizes in a straight size range is somewhere in here, 12, 14, 16, something like that. Now, when it comes to plus sizes start around here and go however far as their resources will allow them. So I think that online store 11 Honore, which I love, they have great styles. I think there are 10 to 24. So they start rather small in terms of the plus size spectrum. And I think like Lane Bryant starts at a 14, 12 and goes maybe to a 28, more than that. So mid-size are referring to the largest straight size and the smallest plus size. Okay. And so not every straight size brand has all these sizes, and not every plus size brand has all these sizes. So mid-size people like me, we shop everywhere trying to figure out if they have these sizes or not. Sometimes I'm too big for a straight size brand. Sometimes I'm too small for a plus size brand. So I'm just always hopping around all over the place. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, and this is true like all over the world, this is why accessories is always the moneymaker of brands, because they don't have to worry about fit, sizing. You know, purses are even more popular than shoes, because even shoes, like some people have wide feet, et cetera, right? So this is mid-size, the largest straight size sizes, the smallest plus size sizes, and it's this ambiguous place, okay, that is not catered to from every brand, okay? I know, first world problems, but that's what mid-size is. It does exist. There aren't any brands that are like, we only do mid-size. I was talking to my Patreon students, and in my fantasy brand, I was going to do 10 to 20 or maybe 22. But I'm like, I'm going to start small and I'm going to start mid-size because I'm selfish. We're doing like selfish fantasy brands. That's me. I'm going to do right in here. All right. So let's move on. First question. Why are there so many sizing charts instead of just actual measurements? Why is sizing for women's clothing so convoluted, especially when menswear usually goes by simple SML or by measurements? Okay, so first of all, let me rewind on this chart for a second. These are body measurement approximates and not the measurements of clothes that would go to each size. Why? Because you can have like a size 10. Okay, let's say we have a size 10 and we're 37 and a half bust, 30 and a half waist, and a 40 hip. That doesn't mean that those are the measurements of all the garments that would fit a size 10 body. If the designer meant for something to be oversized, like a hoodie, these numbers are going to be much bigger, but still be a size 10 or a medium, because hoodies tend to go SML, because you want the oversized look. On the flip side of that, there are plenty of clothes like super stretchy leggings and other athleisure, a lot of lingerie, hosiery, where the actual measurements of the garments themselves are smaller than these measurements because they're made to stretch and expand and hold tight to the body. So there's that. So these are body measurements. And then when you shop online and you click on the size chart, those size charts are the body measurements. So regardless of the measurements of the clothing, of the individual dress, shirt, what have you, they're saying this was meant to be worn on a size 8. This was meant to be baggy, or this was meant to be tight, all those things, okay? Now, I have seen some really great online shopping sites where they have some measurements. I always like it when you have dresses in particular, well, they'll say, you know, high shoulder point to hem is 38 inches. And then you can measure that on yourself and kind of get a much more accurate gauge as to how that dress is going to look on your body, because a lot of models are 5'10", and 5'10" is not the average women's height in any country. I mean, I think Scandinavians are on average the tallest people in the world. Don't quote me. I'm just throwing that out there. Scandinavians are quite tall. And even there, I don't think the average woman's height is 5'10". So, you know, I'm 5'5". I want to know how it's going to look on my 5'5"-ness, you know? So I've seen things like that. I have seen, in particular, I've seen Asian shopping sites where their styles are much boxier and looser than average Western styles. And so they just give like widest, like maybe it's the bust or the hip, the widest across, and then the length of the garment. And that'll give you, and they call it like one size. I know it's terrible and it's fat phobic and they only like to dress skinny people, but they also do that kind of as a gauge for, can you actually fit this, regardless of what skinny people in Asia like to think about your body. Okay. I am making fun of Koreans who are incredibly fat phobic and only carry like these sizes in their stores. Okay. Shout out to my beloved Koreans. All right. So I'm just throwing so much information at you. Sorry. But so SML, SML is done by everybody and it's typically used for items of clothing that are boxier and don't require a precise fit. A lot of athleisure, for example, casual things, sweats, hoodies, boxy casual jackets, t-shirts, that sort of thing. Now, menswear, yeah, it definitely does go by measurements. Like when you take a basic man's shirt, it's usually typically boxy, and the most fitted section is the neck. And so men's shirts are sized by neck circumference. On average, I think straight sizes are like 14 to 17 and a half inches. The assumption is that when you gain weight, when a man gains weight, they'll gain weight all over the torso because on average, men are top heavy. And then, of course, your neck will get larger in proportion to that, but that's where you really need to fit. And so that's the size. Same with jackets, it needs to fit around the chest. And so the chest measurement is how you label a jacket. Pants are done, trousers are done waist and inseam because those are the two, most important things that it needs to fit. So the argument can be made that women's wear, because our bodies are more in and out, with our busts and our wider hip to waist ratios, that we have a lot more, it can be harder to establish a dominant measurement for dresses, which is what women wore for the longest time, which is why instead of trying to put all these numbers on a size tag, people just put an arbitrary number on it, right? So the argument can be made for that. That being said, I looked up a lot of brands to put this body measurements chart together, and every brand has a slightly different measurements and slightly different ways of sizing. And the biggest rule breakers are lingerie, especially these days where bralettes, wireless, tanks, sports bras, they're rising in popularity, especially with the pandemic and comfort dressing. These brands are just making up their own sizing. We are so used to, bra wearers are used to like 32B and 34C and, that kind of sizing system. But I've seen a lot of lingerie brands that do like sizes 1 through 5. And then they have this like weird little chart to show you what a size 5 is. So there's nothing in the world that says that you can't make up a sizing chart for your brand. There's nothing in the world that says your women's wear brand can't do sizing by measurements. I think more and more women's jeans are doing waist inseam measurements, or at least the waist. Go for it. You could do it. Number 3, why aren't clothes fit for curvier bodies standard, both plus size and non-plus size? Listen to me very carefully, and I do not mean to be mean to any of you, but ready to wear was not made to fit all of your individual bodies, curves and quirks and, specifics. And it just can't be. You cannot expect a brand to be selling thousands of units, tens of thousands of units, and fit every single body. Can a lot of brands work on better fit overall? Absolutely. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that these brands, especially the bigger the brand, the more kind of generic body shapes they're going to aim for to vaguely fit as many bodies as possible. That's their goal, okay? Within the confines of their product development budgets, those are their aims. You're never going to get a made-to-measure look from ready-to-wear. It's just not possible. And so you're going to have to, that fit is very important to you, and there's no problem with that, there's nothing wrong with that, then you're just going to have to get the slightly bigger size and get things tailored. I highly recommend getting things tailored. Get a higher quality garment, get things tailored to fit you, get your pants hemmed, get your waist snipped in if that is your thing. And you will like your clothes better. You will like yourself in your clothes better. You are going to wear these clothes more often, get more use out of them. All of the tenets of sustainability that people don't talk about as much. I love all of that. So go get things tailored. How sizing works for couture line as the customized get worn by diff celebs. All right, so haute couture or haute coutures, if you know, you know. Haute couture has no sizing. Couture pieces sold to clients are made to their measurements, and these clients go to multiple fittings to get the perfect fit. And I do believe that this is part of the regulations laid down by the Fédération de la Haute Couture, that clients are required to attend a minimum number of fittings, or the couturier, the atelier are legally bound to offer X number of fittings to their clients to make sure everything is perfect. Okay. Couture is not an adjective that you can throw around to describe your stuff. Haute couture is a trade regulation. It's a trade category that has to follow specific laws and regulations. I go over that more specifically in my What is Haute Couture video. I'll link that below. But anyway, moving on. So when you see celebrities on the red carpet wearing haute couture, they are wearing samples. You as a celebrity, you have to be able to fit the runway sample with like minimal alterations, possibly like non-permanent alterations, like things that are like basted on the inside or something. Okay. I mean, with photo shoots, you have a little bit more leeway because things can be, left open or clamped shut in the back. And then the camera does like very interesting angles and stuff. But red carpet, yeah, you better fit it or you can't. If a couture house is doing something for the red carpet for a celebrity, like from scratch, they're going to make a big fuss about it. They're going to post it all over their social media that they're dressing XYZ person, or they have already dressed XYZ person and they're showing all their behind the scenes shots of Lady Gaga in a fitting. You know what I mean? And yeah, and the celebrity has to be like Lady Gaga level, where they're such a fashion superstar that it's worth it to them for all of that media attention. What sizes should I make my samples in? Make samples the middle size of your size run. If you're doing sizes 2 to 14, then your sample should be a 6. If you're doing sizes 10 to 22, make your sample a 16. Okay, listen. For the tiny percentage of fashion brands who do runway shows, they make runway samples that are sized like, 0, 2, or whatever the model they want to use. But for production, it's the middle size. And it's better for assessing the look, the proportions of the design, the fitting, and later on for grading your pattern. Because you're trying to sell this design to all your customers and not just the size 0 ones. Okay. And I know all y'all snarky ones at home are like, but most fashion houses, they're only interested in dressing skinny people. And I get that. A lot of brands give off that vibe, but there are plenty of brands who are just invested in selling as many clothes to as many people as possible, and so want to attract people of their entire size range. Okay. Some brands, they also want a really small model for their lookbooks and websites too. And you can make smaller samples, once your main sample is perfected. A lot of brands, they take a size 6, they pin the back on a smaller model, call it a day. How does a fashion brand include models of different body types despite having a sample size? Yeah, just make more samples. Okay. Once you've got the sample right, you're going to grade the pattern. Grading the pattern means making all the sizes in your size range. And, you can make more samples of different sizes. This is also a good way to test the grade. And by testing the grade, I mean cut a few sizes of a style to make sure that the graded pattern, all these different sizes that you're going to be selling, still fits really well. Okay. And you don't have to test the grade every time you create a new style, but you should do it when you're doing a brand new silhouette. Okay. Like, let's say that you've only been doing tops this whole time and you want to branch off into pants. You better test the grade of those pants that you're making so that, your size 2 pants look as good as your size 10 pants, and your size 6 pants. Okay. And they're making, like, all of these size pants are making butts look good. The pockets are also graded. So you don't have these teeny tiny little pockets on a bigger booty. All those things. You should be testing the grade when you do a brand new silhouette for sure. I want to know why plus size grading is so bad at Target. My sister says they suck. One of my good girlfriends sent this to me. And listen, girl, in this case, girl is gender neutral, girl. Because product development is expensive. Perfecting fit is expensive. Testing the grade is expensive because you're cutting more samples. And, they're clearly not working that hard on anything. They're constantly pumping out new clothes, because that, testing the grade and perfecting fit, those things require time and money, and time is money. And fast fashion companies think that the only people that deserve money are their executives and shareholders. Did I say that out loud? I think I did. All right. Now, here's the thing about Target, and I'm sure other companies, but the thing with Target is that they don't do a ton of stuff in-house for their fashion stuff. I'm actually not sure the percentage, but they do a ton of private label, meaning they go to other fashion companies, buy many units of styles that they have developed and put their tag in it. So all that stuff you see with the Morona tag, that doesn't mean that they made it, okay? And so because you have all these different brands, all these different factories creating, clothes for Target, it's kind of a disaster. Who is checking the quality on these grades? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that. Also, not necessarily Target, but in many other companies, they deliberately do plus size poorly. Okay. Why? Because they want to be able to say that they did it. They want to get all the media attention and the props, and then shut it down. And because nobody bought it, because it sucked, they didn't try very hard. And then they can publicly be like, we tried. Why isn't there one international universal sizing system? Okay. Who would create it? And who would update it with our changing bodies? Because just the world over, our bodies are different from 1940s bodies. And who would enforce it? And who would pay for it? What would be the regulating body? Okay. At the end of the day, while very, very annoying, we can't have an international uniform sizing system because we as a world do not have uniform bodies. Different regions have different average heights. Our bodies do not uniformly get bigger and smaller in the same way. I recently learned that Lululemon has what they call the Asian cut, and it's available all over Oceania, Australia, Asian countries. And what it is, it's their same styles, but they offer it slightly shorter in the inseam because Asians tend to be shorter, and like a wider cut in the calf, slightly wider because Asians often do have wider calves. Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's smart. Be like, okay, this demographic has these particular fit needs, and if we address their fit needs, they're going to buy more of our leggings. And so that's what they do. And that's what you should do. You should be analyzing the fit issues that your customer has and try to address them in a thoughtful way. 2 questions that could be answered together. How do you determine your grade rules when sizing patterns up or down? And for someone starting a ready-to-wear brand, what is the better size range? Okay. The better size range is the size range that accommodates your customer and your brand story. Sizing is part of your brand, and so are your grade rules. And your sizing should reflect your customer. Okay. So think about who you want to dress and how big they are. Like in that whole fantasy scenario on my Patreon where I was talking about if I started my own fashion brand, who my customer would be. And I do all the homework assignments along with my Patreon students in my fashion design course. And my brand was catering towards women who were late 30s, 40s up. mostly 40s up. I wanted to dress older women in a fun way that wasn't stodgy, that wasn't like dress your age, but it wasn't trying too hard to like relive their teenage years, that nice balance. And also because older women tend to have more money. You know, they're more established in their careers, they've paid off their student loan debt, and they have more money to spend on clothes. They have a better sense of self and their own personal style, and they're not afraid to be a little bit adventurous on occasion. You know, I had this whole like profile down with like older women and this sizing in here. And I was like 10 to 20 to start and maybe a little bit smaller and a little bit bigger because, I'm talking about perimenopausal, menopausal women, their metabolisms have slowed down. Of course, I'm generalizing, their waists get a little bit thicker, and I wanted to dress them comfortably but fun. And so this was, I was doing a mid-size, expanded mid-size sort of sizing, because that's all part of my brand story, what I want to offer to my customers, all of that wrapped up together. So what is the best size range? The size range your customer fits into. Okay, like let's say you want to do really professional work attire for very busty women. There are a lot of, negative pop culture associations about a woman's intelligence the bigger her breast size is. And busty women need office clothes too. Busty women in particular need button-up shirts that close properly over their breasts, okay? Everyone with large breasts who have had that issue, raise their hand, right? So maybe that's your brand story. And so, your grade here is going to get more precise and bigger to accommodate the bustiers. And the hips are not the concern, okay? Because you're really trying to address busty women. So that's how you determine your grade rules. And, when you're sizing, like, how am I going to, like, maybe the hips are always going to be standard, and then maybe you're constantly grading a little bit bigger in your bust. Another example can be, maybe you want to do menswear, but for petite men. Maybe overlapping is trans men or just men who are petite in stature, period. And they want to look like grown-ups. They don't want to shop the kids section to fit, I actually, I have a neighbor who has a trans son, and he was going to a wedding and he was trying to figure out how to look grown up to this wedding without, he didn't want to shop the kiddie section, and he was trying to figure out petite menswear. You don't want to increase in length very much as you get bigger. A lot of sizing, the length gets a little bit longer with every size jump. Maybe you don't want to do that so much when it comes to the petite menswear. This is a complete guide to size, specification, and technical design by Paula J. Myers-McDivitt. There is an orange cover updated edition of this book, but I've had this for years. And it's on my Amazon recommendations list. I've been recommending this book for a long time. I know it's expensive. I know. But it is such a good book. It has so much information that, it's just like one of those things where I find it's worth it. And it has a lot of stuff, including all of these grading charts that can help you. And this person does menswear and women's wear, and it goes through, like, for pants, let's say like a front rise when they're doing a crotch. See how they also, the sample size is their middle size, and you grade -3/8 here, -3/8 the next size, and you see how the bigger the sizes get, the bigger the grade goes, because once they get up to a size 18, it's a plus 1/2 inch, whereas when it gets to a size 4, it's -1/4 inch. It is like that. That's the industry standard. So using a book like this can be incredibly helpful for you to figure out technical design and your grade. The thing about the grade is, again, we have to go back to considering your customer. Okay, every body gains weight differently. Majority of men gain weight around their stomachs, and men's waists often get graded up more generously, especially menswear geared towards older men. But that's just the majority. Men who gain weight around their hips and thighs first, they exist. So who are you dressing? Okay. You could start with that niche, and then expand. You know, one of the things that denim brands do is offer fit profiles. This is becoming increasingly popular. You can have fit one, where it's a narrower, you know, in the hips and thighs, you know, narrower waist to hip ratio. And you can have another fit that's very hourglass instead, you know. So all these jeans are identical in the wash, in the details, in the proportions, but then the size fits, the fits are different. Okay. So when you're starting your brand, I always recommend you start small, even if you have a lot of money to start with. And you have two options. You can start with one thing and offer lots of sizes and fits, like one amazing jean, one great bra. I think Third Love started their empire like this, with one bra, 100 million sizes. Okay. Or you can offer more styles, but offer them in one niche sizing. So you can have, like, let's say, a capsule wardrobe collection in like petite menswear. So short lengths on the sleeves, on the legs, but it's like a complete menswear collection. And like, you know, short dudes will want to just like buy up the whole collection, call it a day, right? And then either way, grow organically according to your customer feedback. Some tall dudes may come around and be like, dang, I love all those pants. Can I just get them plus 4 inches, please? Why isn't there a universal size chart for every brand? It's annoying that each and every store is different. Why isn't it consistent even within the same brand? Okay. So again, refer back to that Target example I gave you, where a big company like that shops private label at a bunch of other places, so that even if it's under one brand, one main label, it's coming from a lot of different sources. So there's that. Also, in large companies, they have different departments designing and producing different categories of garments. So, you know, some companies, they might be split into tops, bottoms, dresses. The bigger the company, the more categories they're going to have, like women's woven tops and young men's knit bottoms, aka sweatpants and basketball shorts, stuff like that. Okay. So even within a category like women's woven tops, there is a good chance that different factories are making all these women's woven tops. Do you know that old car joke, the difference? What's the difference between a Lexus and a Toyota? Factory tolerances. What is a tolerance? Tolerance, okay, I'm gonna show you. So this is a spec sheet, you know, from the book I was just showing you. This is a spec sheet for a blazer. It's a basic blazer. And you see here, they're going to fill in the specs for all of these. And there's a column here for tolerance, plus or minus. Okay. That means, like, let's say the chest width circumference is 40 inches. Then the tolerance is 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, which means that the designer will accept from the factory this margin of error, up to 3/4 of an inch margin of error, bigger or smaller than 40 inches, and still accepts that article of clothing. So when they measure out the sample as it comes in, or when they're QCing like 5% of the production, they will measure the chest circumference. And if it's supposed to be 40 inches and if it's 40.5, that's okay. That's within tolerance. If it's 41 inches, that's too big. That's not within tolerance, and they can send it back to get it fixed. Okay. And so the tighter you are with your tolerances and QCing, you know, the more quality control you have across the board. And so you're going to have consistency of product across the board. And these tolerances, they change depending on, you know, the actual length, like chest width circumference. This is a big measurement. And so the tolerance can be as big as 3/4 of an inch. But, you know, sleeve length, it's a shorter distance. And so the tolerance is only 3/8 of an inch, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So check your tolerances, make sure your tolerances make sense. And that when you are measuring your samples as they come in and measuring production, they're coming into tolerance. You know, you should be measuring random 5% of the production as it comes in. Although I don't know how these massive companies do it. P.S. They don't. Like companies like Zara and H&M with all that product, who is measuring those? before they go to stores? Who is measuring those? The answer is nobody. But like, really, I don't know. That's why like the quality is terrible. Like the cuts that they make in the production of things at every step is what leads to them looking the way they do. If you want consistency of your brand across the board, you just have to have like a really good managing team to be overseeing how all these sizes work together so that whoever's doing woven tops can, you know, work with whoever's doing woven dresses so that at least the top measurements are the same. And so that a woman can confidently buy a size 12 blouse and a size 12 dress from the same brand, knowing that they're going to fit the same on the top. Let's go back to this illustration. I drew two rather ordinary silhouettes, one with more volume on the top, one with more volume on the bottom, and I illustrated them each on two different body types to illustrate how different bodies can make designs look different. And listen, my guess is that you all have different opinions on what looks good, on what kind of body, and what you would change to make it look more hip or more glamorous or sexier or more youthful, whatever your design goals are. And I want you, my darling designers, to think about how your design is going to look on all sorts of different bodies to express your design point of view. Okay? You can't remove bodies from the design process. I'll see you in the next video.